Call this meeting in order. Pledge the flag.
Supervisor Westcott.
Oh, I'm leading. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We want him to speak. He has lots of work. Right.
I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. I'll ask the clerk to do a roll call.
Mr. Conover? Here. Mr. Monroe? Here. Mr. Gerard? Here. Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mr. Brock? Mr. Kenny?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier?
Here.
Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Vansalo? Here. Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Mr. Merlino?
Here.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Ms. Bieber?
Here.
Mr. Sokol? Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. Westcott?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Wood?
Here.
Chairman Garrity?
Here. Need a motion to approve the minutes of the September 19th and October 8th special board meeting. Motion by Matt Sisson, second by Mr. Dickinson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, I'll ask the clerk to read the public notice on the public hearing, local law number 5.
Notice is hereby given that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Warren, New York is considering the adoption of a proposed local law number 5 for the year 2014 entitled the Local Law Amending Local Law number 10 of 2011 in relation to the imposition of an additional mortgage recording tax in Warren County to amend Section 3 to provide that the local law shall remain in effect until December 1, 2016. The purpose of the local law is to provide for an existing additional mortgage recording tax in Warren County to continue past December 1, 2014 and remain in effect until December 1, 2016 as authorized by New York State law. Notice is further given that pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors on September 19, 2014, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Supervisors at the Supervisors' Rooms in the Warren County Municipal Center, Route 9, Queensbury, New York, on October 17, 2014 at 10 a.m., at which time and place all persons interested in the matter of such proposed local law number 5 for the year 2014 will be heard concerning same. A copy of said local law is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the above stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website by order of the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, we'll declare this public hearing open. Anybody who wish to address the board, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. So, on mortgage tax. Any supervisors wish to address the mortgage tax?
I would, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of comments, if I may.
Sure.
The mortgage tax, based on the information I have here, raises $842,907 for Warren County. We seem to be in a situation today where we're grappling to find revenue. So I think this certainly is an extension. This is not a new tax. It is an extension of a tax that we instituted, I believe, in 2011. It is for a 2-year period, and basically keep in mind that half of the revenue produced on a mortgage tax goes back to the towns involved. So I think the net is that this is not new. It's something we instituted a number of years back, and I think it makes economic sense and should be continued.
Thank you. Any other supervisors? Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wasn't that we're talking about the 1/4% that we raised it 2 years ago, not and that 1/4% stays in the county, it doesn't go back to the towns?
That's correct.
Okay, that's why I voted against it then, and I'll vote against it today.
Okay. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I'm also going to vote against it today. I know we enacted it in tough times to generate some revenue for the county, but I just don't feel, I feel that the timing's right now to not go forward with it as an extension. We're in better fiscal shape. More importantly, I'm against a lot of these little additional taxes, which I understand why we did it during the quote-unquote recession, but I believe now we can stop some of these that we added on.
Okay, thank you. Anybody from the public wish to address? We'll hold the public hearing open for a minute, and then we'll go on to privilege of the floor. The first speaker will be Barb Sweet on behalf of Tri-County United Way. Barb?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of the floor. I'm pleased, as always, to be here with you. I'm here to tell you about something that Tri-County United Way, CWI, and a lot of other non-for-profits are going to be doing early in November, and just wanted to make all of you aware, so if you had people in your communities that wanted to be part of this, I put on everybody's packet Stuff the Bus food drive. It's going to take place at the Price Chopper on Upper Glen Street in Glens Falls, and it's going to take place from November 6th, the 7th, and November 8th. And what we're trying to do is we're bringing some buses from CWI, and we're hoping that people will come and starting now and then into that date, drop off foodstuffs so we can take it to the individual food pantries throughout our counties, Warren, Washington, and northern Saratoga County. There's a lot of people that need some information. They need some foodstuffs from some of our local food pantries. We're looking at this as just a one-time shot to get some extra food in for the food pantries as we get ready for the Thanksgiving baskets and the Christmas baskets and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to make you all aware of this particular initiative. It's driven by a lot of people that are participating in the non-for-profit world, and we thank you for your participation in any way you can get word out to your public. That'd be great.
Okay, thanks, Barb.
Thank you. And I just have Ron McLaren's here from CWI. He just wants to say thank you for being here.
So, Barbara, before you leave,
Yes.
can you just tell us what type of food products?
Yes. It would be the type of food products that we drop off at our food pantry, so it's in cans,
Okay.
not in glass, non-perishable. A lot of people use things, can be macaroni and cheese, it can be all sorts of things that you might have. Somebody just mentioned to me they had taken one of those couponing classes and they can, bring in more food, and sometimes you can just take in a couple of extra things of food and drop it off at something like this. So we'd be really glad to let people know about that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Ron?
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to take the time to say thank you on behalf of CWI, myself, and the gentleman I brought with us today for your support towards our Live United Stuff the Bus program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, hopefully we'll help you make it successful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Brandy Bishop and Chelsea Morris from the Health Promotion Center of Glens Falls Hospital who would like to address the board regarding tobacco-free community initiative. Brandy, Chelsea? Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us. I first want to say that Heather Beacon's name is on the agenda, but obviously we're not Heather, Chelsea, and Brandy. So I'll let you know in a second why her name was on there and she's not here. We actually work for the Health Promotion Center, part of Glens Falls Hospital. A lot of people don't know where we are. We're actually the yellow building that's in the far end of the parking lot of Glens Falls Hospital campus. And there's about 12 of us that work there, and we all work under various grants. And we just recently received a new grant that we're working under. Brandy's working under, Heather's working under it, and so am I. So there's 3 of us. And it's called the Living Tobacco Free Grant. And we have 2 components of that grant. So one is a community engagement component, and Brandy's going to talk to you about that. And then the other component is a reality check component, and that's what Heather was going to come and talk to all of you about today. But I can cover a little bit about that and let you know what she does. We cover Warren, Washington, and Saratoga County. And what Heather does under Reality Check, and some of you may have heard of it before, is it's a youth-led program that helps to make the communities aware of the tobacco marketing techniques that tobacco companies use. So they run events. Heather goes into schools and educates people about Reality Check. And it's really youth-driven. So that's where Heather is today, actually. She's presenting in a classroom about the Reality Check program to try to recruit youth, let people know about the deceptive marketing techniques that tobacco companies use. And then the other piece is the community engagement piece. And Brandy will tell you a little bit about what that piece entails.
Okay, thank you. Brandy?
So for the community engagement piece, we work with local businesses and local landlords to assist them with developing tobacco policies. It typically helps their bottom line when it comes to business expenditures on cleaning up the tobacco litter, or if it's a landlord replacing the things when somebody moves out. So we work with them to develop those policies to help business and then also to protect their employees and the people that are residing at the housing complexes. And then this also helps to kind of denormalize tobacco use, so that way it kind of filters into working with the kids and hopefully lowering overall smoking rate for Warren County, which is a little bit higher than it is throughout New York State and even neighboring Saratoga. So we'd like to, work with you guys to get that reduced. We can also work with countywide or individual towns and villages to help you create policies. I know you guys have some good ones even for your municipal buildings already, so we can expand upon that, or we can work with places for increasing parks and playgrounds and things like that to be tobacco-free as well, again, to denormalize tobacco use and just protect people from secondhand smoke and to reduce expenditure on cleaning up litter and things along that line. So we can work with all of that, and we encourage the county board and individual boards to work with businesses and encourage them to work with us as well. So.
Yeah, and if you'd like any help, you can reach out to us. You can find our information on the Glens Falls Health Promotion Center website. So you could reach out to Tracy Mills, who is our supervisor, and she could connect you with us. We're brand new, so I don't know if our personal information is up there yet. We also brought some information with us. And one thing I forgot to give a message from Heather, because she couldn't be here today. She wanted me to let you all know that you really have the power to help to change how youth are affected by tobacco as well. So you could help to change regulations around how far away a school is from a tobacco retailer. You could help to change what type of things tobacco retailers could market or advertise, where advertisements are in relation to how tall children are and what they're seeing every day when they're going in to buy candy, those types of things. So we really encourage you, if you want help, to reach out to us, and we really thank you for letting us come and take the floor.
Sorry, I just had one more thing to add. We're also working on a mapping project where we're going throughout the county for Warren and Washington, and we're mapping where all the tobacco retailers are and also their proximity to schools. So we'll have that information. It'll take us a little while, but we'll have the information to share with you at some point so you can kind of see where the problem lies, and then we can go from there to try and fix it. And like Chelsea said, kind of decrease kids' exposure to their tobacco retailers near schools. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other? Anybody else wish to speak on the public hearing of the mortgage tax? No? Then I'll declare the public hearing closed. Okay, the next I'll ask Sheriff York to introduce Televet. They're the consulting company that we hired to look at the radio communications center and our problems that we're having in the county, and this includes fire, EMS, sheriffs, and local government. So, Bud?
Yeah, Rick Burke is here. He's the managing partner from Televate, and he gave a presentation to our Public Safety Committee and asked that he come so all you board members could see it. Rick?
Thank you, sir. Let me grab my water.
Here, this water.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the invitation to be here. Sheriff, thanks for the introduction, and good morning to you all. My name is Rick Burke, and I've spent about 35 years now as a radio engineer and a consultant to public safety industry. About half of my career I've been in public safety, and the other half I was in commercial, cellular and paging and AM, FM, TV. So I have a really good background and understanding of propagation characteristics and really the background of what really constitutes our radio communications, our land mobile radio communications. So I'm real happy to be here, and I am not going to give a technical dissertation on the on radio. I'm going to give you a practical overview of what we discovered over the course of our program. And so basically, I've got an agenda and talk about what we did, how we did it, what we discovered, and our recommendations for how the county can enhance and improve on a practical and the most economic approach that you can take to improve your radio communications. And I think at this point it's important to say that our responders, their mission critical communication really is their backbone. When we talk to them, we talk to responders all over the country. Radio networks are really, they're mission critical to them. And we take for granted a lot of times that when they show up and they respond to incidents, that everything is just perfect for them. So you have a beautiful and unique county here, and it's the uniqueness of your county that really adds complications for radio propagation. I mean, those of us, we're all kind of radio users today. All of us have cell phones, and we all know where they work and don't work. So really, I can what we talk about today, compare it to your cellular telephone coverage, because the land mobile radio network that our public safety uses is very similar. It relies on a proper radio signal to arrive and be transmitted to and from. So that's basically what we're talking about. I'll give you a little bit of background. So what we did is, we went through a very comprehensive process to gather information. So we need to have a background. What's the county like? I mean, who your responding community? We did an extensive drive test. We rode and measured the network. So we covered over 325 miles. We got to know this county well, and it's beautiful. But it's from a radio engineer's perspective, it's really, we love to engineer in environments like this. Flat environments are a lot easier to engineer in, but with the complexities of your geography, that really complicates and is one of the bases of our current issues. We evaluated the system end to end, the radio sites, the radio channels, the radio propagation. We identified strengths and weaknesses, and today I'm going to provide to you those recommendations that we've recommended. Oh yeah, one of the things I wanted to say is that we didn't include a governance analysis of your network and how you govern it, but what we've seen is it's very sturdy. I mean, in a lot of communities I go to, the problem isn't the radio network, it's the governance of the network. So you folks do a really good job of governing your network, and so with that foundation and with your folks' interest in this, I think that's going to simplify where we go forward and how we fund, or what you decide to do and how we fund it. But our recommendations are for near, mid, and long term. We're looking at options that you can implement short term as well as something you do over the long term. And what I mean by the long term, depending on the availability of funding, is the next 2 to 3 years. Near term is in the next 2 to 3 months. Midterm is anything in between that. You can get these things done if you have access to funding sooner than later, and we'll talk about those. So just to give you a bit of background for those who may not understand, you've got 750 two-way radios, mobile and portable, within your community. You've got over 1,000 pagers, and pagers used by volunteer fire and emergency medical and others. So the pager is very critical because that's the acknowledgement, that's the alert channel, that's when I know I've got a response. And so we've got a lot of volunteers who rely on that. That's the first alert that they receive. So your radio communication covers both a two-way of law enforcement and fire and transportation and others, as well as that paging. You got 23 volunteer fire departments throughout the county, 16 emergency medical service agencies. Obviously, we've got users of public works and other small independent systems within the county. Most, if not all, your fire stations have a local, fire ground channel. So you've got an overall network, and then you've got a local network that they use. Certainly, Glen Falls Police and Fire have a separate network that's interoperable with the county network. In terms of what you have a variety of channels, 6 channels. You have 4 transmit sites. In a county of 1,000 square miles, you're covering a lot of ground. You've really been optimal in your use of your funds for 4. You have a 5th site that does receive. Your network is implemented originally in 2004, and along the way, you've made periodic improvements. However, in 2012, the entire country was required by the Federal Communications Commission to narrow band channels. Without going into detail of that, once we took a channel that was a wide band, we made it narrow. What happens when we narrow it? Just like if we turn a light bulb down from 100 watts to 50 watts to 25 watts, it illuminates less area. So when you narrow band it, you additionally lost some coverage. So that's one of the reasons why you're challenged today. So you have, like I said, you have 5 sites, 4 transmit and a 5th receive. Gore Mountain, Prospect Mountain, Municipal right around the, your stone's throw away, Hague Fire, and then we've got a Warrensburg site that Mr. Neal was able to put in, to help improve reception in that area. You also use a simulcast radio network. So without going into the technology behind it, a simulcast is the most appropriate network for you and for public safety in general, a trunked or simulcast. That allows someone from one end of the county to talk to someone on the other end of the county on an interoperable channel. In the past, basically what we had is we had a radio site, and you had to know where you were. The dispatchers had to know, and the user had to know, and you had to be able to talk over that channel. So you'd have to change your radio to that channel. Today, it doesn't matter where you are. You have a network that allows interoperable communication across the entire county. It's a beautiful thing. However, a simulcast network has the delicate timing of the radio signal. So, when we look at, when we think of time, we think in matters of seconds and minutes. And I'm obviously watching this because I'm told to keep this short. But, in radio systems, we will look at milliseconds. And a millisecond change in a signal's arrival, so signals are all around us. When it comes to our receivers, it comes at different timing. And when that timing is not right in a simulcast network, it can cause interference. Biggest issues we have is the simulcast network in Glen Falls, because all of the channels that are all the radio communications on the mountains can see the city. So we have some challenges there, and we have solutions to solve it. And you do a really good job of maintaining your network. A lot of places we go, we walk into and see sites, and they're a mess. You folks do an excellent job of maintaining your site. And, as it turns out, your radio technicians, tend to be a single point of failure. You never realize how important they are until they're not available when you need them. So right now, you have great support, and we recommend continuing that. So we did a survey. We surveyed folks across, the user population and the network management population, and we learned a lot. Whenever we could, we'd stop someone. I mean, at Bolton, I was there, and there was a firefighter coming across the street, and I talked to him about his fire reception. That's what we do. That's how you learn, by talking to the people. The end users know the most about their networks. So the central theme we learned from all of the folks is that, as I mentioned, they critically rely on radio for their communication. It is their lifeline. They have cell phones, but their radio network is much more reliable, and it's what they use for responding. There are limitations in the county. Those 4 sites that you have do not cover everywhere that we need, and I'm going to show you some maps coming up. Paging service to alert firefighters and ambulance service folks don't cover what we need them to do. The narrow banding that I mentioned affected it, as does just the geography of the county. You're really limited by the terrain. So certainly, if we don't provide reliable communications to our first responder community, we put them at risk and the community that they serve. So it's a really important piece of what we do is to provide. We need to provide them the best that we can within the budgets we can make available. Certainly, as I mentioned, there's been a degradation since rebanding. Another really important theme now is that radio networks were originally designed for mobile use. So you'd be in your car and you'd be on the radio, but now we're all mobile. The portable is really the most important. As all of you are here, it's your portable device. Your radio isn't, your cell phone isn't in your car, although when the first networks were built, they were. So same thing with our responder community. We built them a network that is mobile oriented, but most of our incidents are outdoor. So when an officer, a sheriff's officer or any other officer leaves their vehicle, they really need to be able to stay in touch on their portable. And because of your geography and the limitations of your radio network, that doesn't happen well. They have some vehicular repeaters, but they're an older generation, and, we're recommending that they be upgraded because they're not working as reliable as during our interviews as folks were telling us. They would be on their portable, see their car, but they couldn't talk. So it is just a matter of older technology. Everything you have is 10, 15 years old. And, if we don't look at keeping our cars running that long, our refrigerators rarely last that long these days. So these delicate networks need to, we need to take a look at them. And you're doing a prudent job of looking at it right now. So in terms of challenges, I think, I could spend a lot of time on this, but I've really been talking about it. Our biggest challenge is our 4 sites are inefficient. We've got a beautiful terrain that we all love, but the radio signals don't traverse them very well. Your mobile service, you've got poor audio. You've got some antenna designs that were old school designs where every channel is on its own antenna. We recommend that we consolidate them. So there's some physical things that we can do to change as well as some additional hardware that's required. Certainly the narrowbanding that I mentioned has played havoc on radio communications. Wherever it was weak before, you can't even get a signal now. We lost 6 dB, which is a lot. It's like 100 watts to a 25 watt light bulb. You've also got in your parks, you have regulations that limit very simply kind of restrict us from adding towers. So you also face some other regulations. So what are our recommendations? Any questions so far? All right, so what we recommend is that we really work on that simulcast timing issue. It is being worked on. There's 2 components to it. There's the fiber optic and the backhaul piece, and then there's the radio side. So the folks are working on it now, and that'll give us some improvements. We really want to see the results of that before we make a recommendation on whether or not we need a tower in Glens Falls. We think we can solve it through the simulcast modifications. We're also going to make recommending some antenna changes. You have antennas that are stacked on the tower, so the lowest channel and the highest channel are 100 feet apart in some cases. We want to consolidate them together. That'll give us a similar coverage perspective. We're recommending updating the vehicular repeaters that are in your sheriff's vehicles, and also adding paging repeaters at a variety of different fire stations. That paging repeater will repeat the paging channel, and it'll improve coverage in the vicinity of the fire station where most of the fire volunteers live. And then we're recommending adding some additional radio sites. So if we look at we want to take a look at where we are today. This antenna, this coverage map here, the green would be portable talk-in, and so wherever it's green, you can use your mobile. Wherever it's red, you can use your mobile as well. So when we add and we make the configuration changes we're talking about, you could see that we would increase coverage by making some making some antenna configurations. Oh, the wrong way. All right, so by making these changes, you're going to see increases in red. That's going to improve portable coverage and improve mobile coverage as well. So some of these types of changes are fairly inexpensive to make as in regards to adding new sites. So this is the first thing we do, phase 1. Okay, so in terms of the portable. All right, so on the portable side, adding the vehicular repeaters will improve, again, dramatically improve. These repeaters would improve coverage for portable communications to this level. So red is mobile, and by adding in the portable receivers, the vehicular repeaters to the vehicles, we improve the coverage reliability of the portable. So ideally, we want coverage throughout. Everywhere it's white, there's no coverage. So ideally, we want to expand coverage dramatically. So All right, so basically, these repeaters are important to add to all the vehicles. You have them now, they're old school, add new vehicular repeaters to all your vehicles. It's going to improve officer safety. When they're out of the vehicle responding to an incident, they will be able to communicate back over the network through the repeater in their vehicle that repeats a signal to their portable radio. A wise investment, and this is something that you really need to improve today. All right, so now let's go to mid to long-term options. And we're looking at adding, we're recommending 4 additional radio sites be added to the network. These will be strategically located in various locations. The first thing we want to do, and I'll come back to Stony Creek, but the first thing we want to do is that radio receive site in Warrensburg really needs to be a full site. We need to make it a transmit and receive site. And we recommend, it's sitting in a hole right now by the fire station, we'd recommend putting it up on a hill so you get a better coverage. The higher we go up with a radio tower and the antenna, the larger the coverage area we're going to get. So where it's at right now, we'd recommend. In Luzerne, your coverage there is, almost non-existent. And you really need a site out there. There's nothing we could do to stretch coverage out there any other way but to add a site. Bolton area, all along the 9N corridor, along the road with the trees and the valleys, a very poor coverage. And there's a site called Black Mountain on the other side of the lake. That's just a beautiful site, but it's very difficult to get to. You need a helicopter to arrive there. But we recommend putting that site in, and certainly your own folks have recommended it first. So the Glens Falls, if we can't solve the problem with the change in the simulcast, we would need a site there. And we also need a site in Chestertown. So let's come back to Stony Creek. Stony Creek's a beautiful area. We can certainly add coverage there, but we haven't added it into the budget. The problem there is that it's in the park. It's very hard to get sites. If there are existing towers there, let's try to find them. And here, I wouldn't recommend building a tower if alone, maybe in partnership with the park. We could add coverage there. It's just a very challenging area to build in. If we have existing sites and we didn't really have opportunity to search for them, that's what we would do. But we want to add to that community. We need to, first determine what's there that we might be able to use. So, we want to look, if you don't want to build a tower, you really want to look for existing towers. Cellular carriers and other carriers have built towers, so let's look for what they have and try to optimize using those instead of building our own new towers. We have a site in Hague, and this is a good example of radio engineering. Your Hague site's beautiful site. I don't know if has anyone seen the Hague Tower? All right, so it's really well designed. But it sits in a bowl. Really, if it was up on the hill, it would have a larger coverage area. But, to implement it at low cost and to get it in quickly, you had a site already there that you could build upon. So to the idea of going up higher, takes more time and money. But we should really assess moving that site. We'll get a lot more optimal coverage out of it if we do that. So this is the current coverage with the 4 sites. And then this would be the coverage and adding the additional 4 sites. So you could see, you get a really significant improvement by adding these sites. And if you look closely at these maps, and we look at every nook and cranny, a lot of these roads here, a lot of your county roads aren't covered. I mean, you have huge holes within your county roads. And, incidents occur on highways. And so, adding these sites, would allow us to fill in the roads that where our officers and other folks are need communications at. So in conclusion, we also, as I mentioned earlier, adding the paging repeaters over the paging channels. Another thing you want to be conscious of is that your radio network is aging. Right now, you put in a radio network in 2004, and 10 years later, that network is already aging. And so, part of our recommendation is that we should include a budget to improve a life cycle improvement. Because if we add the new equipment, by the time we're done adding the new equipment, the old equipment will have aged. So we really should address these simultaneously, in our opinion. And we've added in what to do and where to do it in our presentation. In terms of other options, I mean, this is something that we're doing this kind of work around the country. Our schools are a priority, and any officer that tries to communicate in schools, they tend to be great buildings that last 100, 200 years and more, and they are very difficult to get a radio signal in. So I would, put some, we could put some distributed antenna systems in there, repeaters that repeat the signal. We'd highly recommend that we identify some high traffic areas, schools and others, and consider what we should do to improve coverage in those as well. You can also consider enacting ordinances where a new building, would really need to put in a larger building would, you would say we've got to put in a repeater system that would provide coverage to public safety communications. All right, so where are we at on the budget here? So what we're looking at is in a phased approach, some, near term, midterm, long term. This is a breakdown of some of those life cycle improvements. Some of the things we could do near term, I mentioned, antenna changes, simulcast improvements, and then adding, changing out equipment that's failing. You're going to need new dispatch consoles somewhere down the road, and your radios and your pagers are aging; they should be replaced as well. So in terms of a larger budget for that. Well, this covers exactly what we've just talked about. So here's a more of a detailed budget. Now I've got a line itemized budget for each and every one of the components, the equipment, the services associated with it for all of these items. And the grand total for the things that we're recommending, for the changes, enhancements, improvements we're recommending is slightly over $6 million. This is a line item, a roll up of those enhancements that we've discussed. And also, as we add and make improvements, you're going to have to be sure that you have to, an operating cost is going to change as you add. So you want to be sure that we have an operating budget of a reasonable amount, somewhere in, we figure, 8 to 10, 12%, so 10% of our costs is going to become operational budget. So this is a greater breakdown of the individual components I've discussed, and I'd be happy to go into them in as much detail as you want. And then in terms of next steps, we've identified a series of next steps to implement the recommendations that I've discussed. So be happy to go through these, but I think it'd be maybe prudent to open up the floor for questions, sir.
Sure. Anybody have any questions on the proposal? Travis?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please come up to the mic so we can record it.
I guess my question is, if we're kind of find ourselves in this spot because they're going from 25 kilohertz spacing to 12.5.
Yes, sir.
They're already talking about 6.25.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we address that as well? They're also, you're going from wideband FM to narrowband FM. Mm-hmm. They have Project 25 in the works, digital. So where are we, how does the long-term address this? I look at some of these things, and I think there are some things that have to be done right away. Obviously, this is important to us. I look at the total bill of $6 million, and while that seems a whole lot nicer than $8 million for a runway, it does seem, again, like a lot of money, and it does seem that there are other things out there, like hardening the cellular structure. Again, this is a longer-term project, but there would be benefits for Stony Creek, Thurman, et cetera, if the towers could also be used for cellular, and there is thoughts long-term about doing such things. But again, this does not solve Mr. York's problem right away, and I'd be in favor of taking care of all that short-term issue stuff. But that's those are my questions.
Who are you, sir?
Travis White.
What do you do?
I'm an engineer.
There you go. Okay, that's good. Always tell we got another engineer in the room. So, the narrow banding, yes, there is a phase 2 of Project 25. You're absolutely right. So, with the narrow banding, we don't necessarily have to go to that second phase of narrow banding. It hasn't even been implemented a date that we'd have to change that. But Our biggest issue when we have the narrowbanding is your geography. So at some point, the geography of our community is one of the biggest barriers we have. I'd recommend let's fix what we have now, because I think the changes that we have will also accommodate any future changes and reduction in the bandwidth of it if we implement the changes we have now. The idea of partnering with the cellular carriers is fundamental to what we've proposed here. We think we should use their existing towers. We also believe in recommending from the fire department's perspective that there are solutions, IM responding and e-dispatch, that actually operate over the cellular network. They come as a page, and they can be delivered by the dispatcher. So I don't know, do we have any of the, do you have that solution in today? Do you use any of those? How do you like it? How do folks like it?
Yeah, it works.
Okay, so yeah, we can implement that. I mean, those are, but again, you all use your cellular telephone networks around here, and the folks that we talk to are responders, and they also, are saying that their cellular network doesn't work where they need it, where the radio network works, and vice versa. So, I mean, yeah, we really should use the cellular carriers and partner with them, absolutely. Why should we not leverage their investments, and why should we not let them leverage our investments so that we have a collaboration? So we can, it makes sense from an operational business practice for our government, and private-public partnerships are very prudent. In terms of the cost, I mean, these costs really require, we've looking a longer term out to replace your radios. I mean, if your community comes back to you in 3 or 4 years and says, I need, a few more $1 million because my radios are failed and they've aged, it's really up to you. We're looking at a phased approach. Spend some money now, budget over a longer period of time, because these costs aren't going away. We're not going to, in the near term, give up, in my opinion, give up our mission-critical radio network to use our cellular telephone network for our response. I don't see it happening in the near term. We are working, Televate is working on the first public safety broadband networks in the country right now in Los Angeles and in New Jersey. So the public safety broadband, I don't know if you've heard of FirstNet, it is coming, but it's not coming any day soon. And when it does arrive to Warren County, it's not going to have the breadth of coverage that we have now, or we're going to need on a mission-critical radio network. So I think I really agree that there are things we can do together. Your ideas are they're really good ideas. I'd love to sit and chat with you more about it and refine, our approach based on what's best for your county. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is twofold, and you touched on it just a moment ago, is the phasing in, the timing. Mr. Whitehead talked about what is needed immediately and what's down the road. Can you give a sense of the timing and the expenses that are associated with it? Like, what do we need to do immediately, and how much is that going to cost? What can we push down the road? And then as a side to that, what sort of grants are available potentially to help us fund this?
Okay, so good questions. We designed this in multiple phases. So what we really think is what we discussed earlier. We need to work on that timing, that simulcast timing, and evaluate moving antennas, because some of those antennas are just not located in where I believe they should be. You have an individual antenna. That's really an old school design, and it was good at the time, but you have antennas all throughout a tower. So you get the highest one at, say, 150 feet and the lowest one at 40 feet. And you have depending on who's using those channels, they get a different coverage footprint. If we consolidate them, we're going to get a better, more reliable coverage footprint for every channel. So these initial changes on the front end, of antenna changes, of simulcast changes, and we really believe that you should do your vehicular repeaters sooner than later. You have them in the vehicles today. Not every vehicle has one, but they're really an old school, and they actually are difficult to operate from an end user's perspective. You have to turn them off or turn them on when there's multiple vehicles. When you have multiple officers responding, they interfere with one another. So there are new technology for a couple $1,000s a piece that will solve that problem. So near term, I would say the antenna changes, the simulcast improvements, and the repeaters, including some paging channel repeaters at various fire stations. I'd start there. That would be less than, somewhere in a $500,000 to $750,000 range for that and those initial costs. We don't need to replace all our radios today. That's the longer term. And however, towers, new facilities, it's very difficult for me to sit here and say, well, we can delay that, a few more years. Every day that we don't have coverage when we could have coverage, we have a risk. And so if we can get funding now, we should do it. In terms of grants, federal grants are very, very difficult to obtain. The state, the state of New York, takes all the 911 fees and then has a grant every year. So I was just told today that they got a PSEP grant, that they're going to use for the 911 facility. So I wouldn't bank on grants being the total source. I'd say we're going to have to find some local capital and continue to put in grants and get what we can. We've written grants for other counties in New York, and they've received $500,000, $250,000. Some others that we haven't written have gotten a little bit larger money for radio networks. Saratoga County just changed out their radio network, a very expensive endeavor because they went from VHF to 800 megahertz. So a combination of local money and grant money and a phased approach based on what you folks are able to fund and you think important. Having worked with the community, the responder community would love to see improvements made tomorrow. Logically, we know we can't make them that soon. Because if funding wasn't an issue, we can do things very rapidly. But we have to look at how long a funding cycle you will have to do. I think it really comes back down to the funding, in my opinion.
Bud?
You spoke a little bit about how we all use radios in the form of a cell phone. My question is there any opportunity to either get increased revenue from the cell companies or to reduce our expenses by working with them on a partnership?
Yeah, really good questions. And right now, all of us pay 911 fees on our cell phone bills. I think, if you look at a telephone bill, I don't know how many of you look at your telephone bill on a monthly basis, but on there are a couple of fees. One is a 911 fee, and that seems to, in this state, goes to the state government, and they get it back to you in a way of you're applying for grants. And that doesn't make a lot of folks happy in this state that that's how it goes. In a lot of other states, that funds go right to the county and the community, and they distribute it through a 911 authority. Now you have a state 911 authority. So could you petition to increase your rates here? I don't know. That's not always a politically prudent thing to do, to ask, to increase fees. Could we petition the state? I think you should, but I don't think they're going to any day soon change. Partnerships with carriers makes a lot of sense. They want to get access. I mean, they're looking to always improve their service to be competitive, and you have facilities and tower locations that they would ideally like to get to, and they would probably be willing to private-public partnership to increase their footprint and give you access to their sites as well. We work also in a number of communities where we help define, with cable companies, where you have a partnership with a cable company to give access to their pipes and other than enacting other fees on perhaps visitors, the challenge of raising revenues and not upsetting your constituency is certainly what you all think about on a day-to-day basis. So it's a challenge. I mean, how do we increase revenues? How do we generate the revenues we need? I mean, we support, you could do, obviously you can do a bond, but those aren't always, the right approach. So this is this balance of how do I generate the revenues based on how do I not overburden my taxpayers? And I'm assuming you have lodging and meal expenses already on, and so it's not it doesn't always feel good about adding on another fee, but nobody looks at their phone bill, and I'm always happy to spend money for public safety, but I don't know. It's a really challenge. These are challenging points. I think there's opportunities to just simplify it, opportunities for public-private partnership with the cellular industry and others is available to you.
Right.
Yes, sir.
We had talked to you when we were on a conference call about we're in analog now, and digital is more state-of-the-art, but that'd be more expensive to go to, and the departments, the EMS, et cetera, would have to invest in new radios if we went to digital. And I think it went from $6 million to $8 million to implement. My concern is, I guess my question, and could you comment to it, is the analog seems to be passé, and digital is where we're headed. And, we've narrow banded. Are we spending money wisely staying analog when in a period of years, maybe you could comment on that maybe that would be outdated, and we wish that we did digital right up front? And secondarily, question minimal on the short term where we do repeaters. Are repeaters, or are there digital or analog repeaters? Because if we made that decision, in another year or so, and we had bought analog repeaters, or am I speaking out of the box there?
No, you're right on. Today, what we have is all of our cell phones are digital. We can purchase radio equipment that's digital. In fact, one of the opportunities we had for managing the narrow banding was to go digital, because a digital receiver can talk to a weaker signal. So I mentioned narrow banding, compress the bandwidth, we're looking at a board, I could draw it, but we narrowed the channel, we narrow banded it, we lost some of the potential to use the channel. Digital would allow us to talk to a weaker signal, and it is an option for you, but your terrain is also a barrier to that. If we put locations in the right place, we can still, maintain coverage whether in analog or digital mode. I mean, we can still continue to provide reliable communications over an analog system. I suspect someday it'll cost more to be analog than it will be to be digital. Today, that's not the case. But you can buy equipment that's digital capable, and you all do with your grants. You have to buy Project 25 capable radios, and that would make it an impossible digital radio. So you just don't buy the software that allow that. So if we stay analog, you buy equipment that can be upgraded to be digital. So you have an option that you could always make it digital. Should you make the investment now for the additional $2 million? Well, if you have it, it would probably be prudent to consider it, but you will have to phase it in very carefully, because you're going to have to replace all your radios sooner than later, because you'll probably have a lot of radios that aren't capable of being upgraded to be digital. So it's a challenging question, and I'm sure if we run around the room, we get a mixed opinion of it. And I think in the end, what was decided to come to you with an analog solution. Should we go for a digital solution? I think that's you should assess it, but it's going to have it's going to be an additional 25%, 30% cost over what we have.
What did Saratoga County do?
I believe they went digital, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they went digital on an 800. They made a major change. You can get, there are more 800 megahertz channels available than there are at VHF. But we don't need more channels. We need more sites to fill in, the coverage that we don't have. So we don't have an issue with channels. I wouldn't recommend us going to 800 megahertz, because they're not as mountainous as you, and radio at 800 megahertz doesn't have as good a propagation at VHF anyway. You get a larger footprint, but the mountains are our barrier. What frequency band, the radio signal doesn't go through the mountains. You have to strategically locate your sites to cover areas you need to cover. I'm really not giving you an answer on that. I think this is your decision.
The discussion was helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, because we have a long agenda?
Just one question. I mean, as we look into moving to other phases and years down the road and changing technology, I'm a little bit concerned about, what we invest in becomes obsolete very quickly, or there's something new out that had we waited, we could have used that and saved money. Or, the other thing that I'm thinking out loud here, the use of satellites. Is there anything if you look into the crystal ball, do you see anything there?
Yeah, well, fortunately, on some projects, I have to have the crystal ball out all the time, so I could share with you. I love we have time after this, or you know what I mean, for a beer tonight, I'd be happy to share a lot with you. But let's start with satellites. No possible way satellites are going to provide us with reliable public safety communications. You have to see the satellite to talk to it, and when you run in a building, you can't see a satellite. When you're in your car, you can't see a satellite. I could have an antenna on the roof. Very expensive, very unreliable coverage, used for only mission-critical disaster when I can, put up an antenna, look at a bird up there, and give me a throughput. So that's not going to be our solution. However, satellite has its place, particularly in command vehicles. You have a command bus out there, and when I've got a major incident and I don't have access to a tower, and I have a link up, so they have their place in engineering systems. In terms of the future, so I mentioned FirstNet. I don't know have any of you heard of FirstNet? So FirstNet is a nationwide initiative to deploy a public safety broadband data network based on 4G LTE. So have you heard of 4G LTE? Yeah, so you have 4G LTE right here, a lot of you. It's a great new technology, and it's going to be a really beautiful thing for public safety. It'll be nationwide interoperability, but we're just starting it. It's going to still be 5-10 years out, maybe even longer to get here. I don't know how long it'll take. Your problems are today. You really can't wait for this to be, you've got. Unfortunately, however you want to look at it, is you have to have an interim step before you get there. And that's why even in our proposal, we say use repeaters, make changes at antenna at your tower sites, a low investment that gives you a short-term improvement. So, but even then, with 4 towers in a geography like this, you're going to need more towers. No matter what technology you use, you're going to need more radio sites to provide the reliable coverage you need. And including, and if we go to Stony Creek, we're going to need more towers than what we've recommended there. So you've got to have towers. And the partnership idea with the commercial carriers is a good one. Let's leverage that. Let's talk to them. We recommend that. Digital versus analog, that's a near-term investment. I wouldn't take it off the table, but I would take it off the table if we're having an issue on our funding. I would say we could still do what we're attempting to do with more radio sites. But, from an engineer's perspective, the world is going digital. We might want to consider it.
Any other questions? Because we do need to move on. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. We're going to start with committee reports, and we're going to start with Supervisor Gerard.
Oh, thank you. Just an update as far as facilities in the courts, and I need Martin involved also. The meeting that we had, the special meeting called, brought to light many issues. I thought that we had decided to stay on campus, and I thought that we had decided to keep the courts together. But with this, I guess, the sticker shock of the amount of money proceeding forward with one of the plans, we had a recommendation to look at the whole footprint, change that into courts, and maybe going off-site. After the meeting, I had a call from Bob Sears, who represents One Apollo Drive. He was very interested in showing me the facility, and in the regard were you going to stay on campus or with the courts, and I explained what happened at the meeting. But he also asked if you're going to move departments off, would you consider our location also and come and look at the building? He contacted John Stroh and Bud Taylor, and we did go down and take a tour of the building, and he has the square footage available for the whole courts, 55 to 60,000 square feet. The brochure that he initially had given us, had $17 a square foot on the brochure. That was represented fairly in our hearing as a comparative, but he said that the owners of that facility were very aggressive with trying to get this space rented out, especially in a long-term venue, and taking all the square footage they had available. So he did send a proposal on through email, condensing it. It had it at $9 a square foot for leasing. That included outfitting
the 60,000 square feet with a cap of $400,000. And anyways, that needed to be brought, I thought, ethically to the board and presented that is out there and available. And then that leads me to ask Martin, if it's the board's desire to kind of deviate from what we decided because of the impact of the costing, et cetera, and look at the leasing again in a similar fashion to what Bob presented. I don't feel comfortable because Mr. Levinsky didn't get my same time, who was interested, and possibly he has a fair amount of square footage that would also avail us to him giving a price. And I think John entertained Mr. Skimmerhorn had given a verbal pricing on a building he had, but that went against keeping the courts condensed in the 60,000 square foot frame. It would require breaking the courts apart, which I think we decided to keep together. Anyways, having said all that, I just, in the interest of fairness and vetting everything that's available and looking at where we're headed with this, my experience on the board has been to RFP those type proposals, and then have talked with Clark Patterson and Matt, who has said, they would set up also criteria that would meet our standards so that we're getting apples to apples in what we're going to actually accommodate. So I guess that's where I'm at with it, and I wanted to get it out sooner than later. Bob is here, but my points are, Bob certainly is doing his job. He's been one of the finest commercial realtors in the area for years, and we appreciate his time. But in fairness, we have to proceed legally and fairly for everyone that might be interested. So I need Martin's input on how we go forward if the board decides that they're looking for leasing for the courts and/or the movement of other departments if the courts occupy their space.
Chairman? Yep. I don't know that I could say it any better than Supervisor Gerard. I mean, I think that's the process. I think that's the process you want to engage in. I think it's an RFP process. I think it's drawing up specifications, design specifications, et cetera, with your engineers. If you want to head in that direction, I think that's the best way for you to know what's out there, what's available, both space-wise and price-wise. And County Law 215 really kind of calls for that process. And I think you're spot on. I think that would be the way to go forward with that type of process.
And then, Mr. Chairman, just up to you. We don't have to continue on today unless you want to, but we can do it at committee meeting the 29th as far as if that's where we want to proceed. But this is one of the biggest decisions that I think we all are going to be involved with. So the way I like to run things, there's only 5 on our committee. I know many supervisors always attend our committee meetings and have input. But with something this large and with so many parts involved, I don't mind discussed, or would like it discussed at the board here and get their input to see what we should do. Because then at least we can we can execute things, and we can eventually vote yay or nay on them and move this thing forward. I think you are in agreement. We owe this to the judges and the court systems. We've put it off for a long time, so I'm just trying to be as efficient as we can be with the options we have available and expedient so that everybody kind of knows where we're headed eventually. Yeah, I'm going to defer to Paul. Where are we with after our last special meeting as far as the board goes? What choice did the board make?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just actually just talking to the county attorney about that. I'm pretty sure, and of course the board can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I thought that the board, at least the majority of the board, decided they wanted to keep the courts on campus. So if that's the case, the committee really couldn't take action that would be contrary to that unless the board today changed its mind.
That's correct. But
I'd like to support everything that Supervisor Dan just said. But I think it's a good idea to slow the process down a little bit. I know there's dates that we're supposed to meet to meet the court system requirements, but this is a tremendous amount of money. And without doing anything, we've had people step forward and have cut the price in half of what we think it would cost to rent. So I think we should explore all options at this point.
Okay. Mark?
I was just going to say that my recollection was last week we voted to take alternative 3, the relocation of all court facilities, off the table. So I guess we're going to have to revote today if we're going to decide to put it back on, which I'm okay with doing. I couldn't agree more. We should look at every option and make sure that we do our due diligence and save the taxpayer as much money as possible. But I think we took it off the table last week.
Ron?
Yeah, listen, I'm all for saving money, but let's understand that an RFP like that, I think before it would be sent out, I think we would have to come to a conclusion on what we're going to do with the 40,000 square feet taxpayers have already built that we presently occupy on this campus. You can't take a 20, whatever it ends up being, an 18 to 22,000 square foot addition. My concern would be that we're turning that into a 60,000 square foot program somewhere else, and then we're going to have to deal with the 40,000, I believe that's the number, 40,000 square feet that we presently have. So I think that the owners, the county, would need to come to some conclusion relative to that before we go out and solicit a proposal that would indicate that we're interested in moving all of our court facilities off campus. And I would be interested in hearing from some of the other supervisors in that regard.
Anybody? John?
I think the court made it pretty clear that they wanted to stay here with all their interaction with all the other county departments. I don't understand this conversation at all. I can't believe we can't get that behind us.
John? Supervisor?
Yes, I did run into Richard Skimmerhorn on another matter, and this topic came up, and I explained to him, and he did start to say and talk in terms of court system. And I said, well, the will of the Board of Supervisors was that we keep the courts unified and that we keep the courts here at the Municipal Center. However, what we were doing was looking at options of maybe moving other departments out of the building to enable more room for the courts to expand within this building. And he said, well, whatever it is, I mean, I'll build to suit. If you want me to build a courtroom, or you want me to build for other departments, and whatever their needs are, I'll build to suit. And that's incorporated into the cost. And he said, I believe he said, I did not see the letter, I believe he sent some of the administrators' letters, that the cost would be $9 a square foot, and that if it would make things easier, he could even furnish the buildings in accord with what the desire of the county, and he could work out that cost with the county so that it would be a seamless transition or as much as possible. So I did have that conversation, and then he went on to say how much the county would save over a 20-year basis with going a route such as his. So, like I said, I did not see the letter that was sent to the county. I'm giving you the highlights of the conversation.
Fred?
I think before this building was built in the early 60s, I think the Board of Supervisors at that time had the vision to have a large campus and to construct a building that has pretty much met our needs for the last 50 years. And to look at it just in the short-term time frame of 20 years, I think is a mistake. Even if the costs are comparable for the first 20 years, what about the next 30 years that the court is here? And if you run the numbers, even if it's 50,000 square feet, that's $9 million a year. I'm sorry, $9 million over the 20 years. But then what is it over the 50 years? It's more like 25 million, assuming that the rents don't go up. So I think we need to look beyond just the next 20 years, because this court system is going to serve our needs if we do it properly for much longer than 20 years. And I don't think we should be looking to move any of the court off campus, possibly some of the other offices that don't rely on proximity to the court.
But I think the ideal thing that we should do, we've got a building here that's, going on 60 years old now. The windows leak heat tremendously. I mean, there's a lot of improvements that would have to be made in this building. I think we should make those improvements. I think we should
allocate the space for the court system here in this building. Any of the departments that we would have to move out, it makes a lot of sense to me to rent at a lower cost. And we might actually have some departments that would serve the community better if they were located in another area. So I really think we should look at every possible alternative. And I agree. We agreed at the last meeting to keep the courts here. I still think we should. But I think that, well, I don't know what the number is. I don't know how many square feet we'd be looking for if we kept the courts in this building.
Ms. Seaver?
I think that we've had an opportunity to do a little bit of homework and some research from our last meeting. And listen, I'm a team player as well. If you guys want to go back out and you want to look at all these other options, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to end up right back here adding on an extension or doing something here on campus for our courtrooms. But my question to all of you is, if we take this time, we slow down, we look at all these options, we go back out, what are we going to do in the meantime to address the concerns that are really important right now? When we look at the findings that we've had in those reports from the Office for Court Administration, how are we going to address those? And temporarily, what are we going to do for next January? Because if our record keeps proving us right here, it's going to take a while to make this decision. So how are we going to address that temporarily for that court and those findings in that report, which are so important?
Rachel's point is well taken, and I don't know if an apology is in order, or not, but as a facilities chairman, and being on this board for 9 years, you know, we've had an experience with not doing the courts. In your opening remarks in January, this was something that you wanted to accomplish. We deal with engineers, our own engineers, and we hire Clark Patterson. I felt it incumbent upon me to do it the way you would if you wanted to build a house, an office building, and proceed and get the dialogue going and decisions made so that they had direction and they could do drawings and bid and all the things we know that has to happen. But the reality of it is there's 20 of us here. I think in the last 2 elections we've replaced 4 and 5, so there's 9 new people that certainly haven't heard all the dialogue that we have about the courts or the inputs. And the reality is that we need to vet everything and as I say, chew it up and spit it out, and I think that needs to be done. I certainly have my feelings on it, but having said all that, the important part here is Jeff Tennyson is the one that tries to move things forward because that's what we're telling him to do. And he approached me this morning, and I think he's comfortable with preparing for the short-term and temporary solution. Because I don't think we're going to make that January 1st, 2016 readiness. And we can have some comfort level there that will be prepared temporarily. And during the time going forward here, we'll do the best we can with checking everything out and have our votes accordingly. And I think we'll end up with the best plan that we possibly can have when we get everything in front of us and all that we need to look at. You know, without delaying it too much more, Bill, did you have a comment or?
Yeah, I think we need to look at the entire plan again because family court existing is 4,992 square feet. And if we added 50% to that, you'd be talking about 7,500 square feet, and under the needs is 21,000 square feet, 5 times the size of the present courts. The court's been limping along for some time, and I appreciate it. But knowing John from Clark Patterson, he interviewed everybody, and the efficiency, his efficiency is beyond question. But if he interviewed a person and he said, how many client attorney rooms do you need? And the person said 4, and the next person said 6, next person said 7, he put in 8 because he wants to satisfy everybody. So I think the total plan is a Cadillac. We need a Chevrolet plan, and that's my comment.
Okay, before we do anything, and if we move it back to committee, we need to waive the rules, and if you want the committee to look at other alternatives, we need to waive the rules and take a vote on moving it back to committee. So what's the pleasure of the board? If not, we are staying on campus.
right now, the vote of the board is to stay on campus, and so the committee as well as staff would have no other alternative but to work on the direction that the board has given.
So that's, Fred?
I believe the decision was to stay on campus with the court, still explore the opportunity of moving other departments out.
Well,
That's correct.
So we want the committee to take that up. Dan, you comfortable with that?
If that's what the board wants, the direction, then that gives me great clarity and direction, and I think we can.
I believe consensus is that's where we do. We'll give it back to committee and let them look at moving other departments offsite. Yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Then, yes, Mr. Budget Officer.
Well, for the life of me, I can't understand why we want to disrupt the whole county to accommodate the courts. And getting to Bill's point, I understand what Bill's saying, that it is a lot more square footage, and I think it can be pared down. But the family court we have right now, I think, it's a time bomb waiting to happen. And if that bomb goes off, $10, $12 million could be a small amount of money. But, and beyond that, I think we're circumventing the laws that we took an oath to uphold. Mainly the prevailing wage law, the Taylor Act, proper bidding, and these are the laws that we took an oath to uphold. And by seeking the lowest possible lease, we're circumventing those laws. Now, if we don't like paying them wages, then we should be talking to Albany to get that changed, because I don't agree with it either. But that's the laws that we work under.
Yeah, a lot of good points out there. My view has not changed. I do think we should still stay here. I just want to kind of touch on a couple of things. If we were to go back and then move it off-site, our sheriff's budget's going up significantly this year because of corrections office. You better plan on it going up again, because now we're going to be in the business of transporting prisoners, and that's going to cause a lot of extra cost in your budget. So that's going to have to be factored into the cost.
But I think I just heard the board say, staying on site, so we can get over that. Committee will look at moving departments off. I think we can end this conversation. One less comment.
I can hold it if you want, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that would be good.
All right.
Anybody else wish to comment? Fred?
Just one thing.
Hold that. If I'm gonna hold it, you're
Fred.
gonna hold it.
Hold that thought. Huh? Okay.
I'll bring it up with the chairman on this.
Do any of the judges wish to address the board today? I know you're out there somewhere.
Chairman, I would love to, but I know you have an agenda. I have a lot of things I'd like to say, but I'll defer at this time when it goes back to committee.
The judge,
we don't know of any temporary solution. No one's discussed that with us, but if it's separate and distinct and unattached to the current umbrella or envelope of the court system, that's going to invite more and more input from the Office of Court Administration on that temporary solution, which is 14 months away now.
Okay.
The other overall solution, I don't know how you can slow the process down anymore. We've been going through this process, my personal experience, for 12 years. So it can't be slowed down anymore, but the temporary solution is a critical concern.
Okay. Thank you. Judge Breen?
I want to thank you all for all your time, and my name's Tim Breen, and I'm the ticking bomb down in family court. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to come to the courthouse. We've invited a number of you personally on Tuesday. The door is open at 8:45. We would love for you to walk around, to be able to talk to you all, to explain some of the history of the facility that we're working in, to address your questions, and just get a good taste of what we're talking about. So if you're available, we'll be there. And that's Tuesday morning at 8:45. So we look forward to seeing you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, Chairman, just one comment on the report. We all received a report on staff relative to the impact to various county departments. Should they be considered to be separate and moved off campus? I would ask all of you to consider that going forward, because I think it relates to the efficiencies. Go to Evelyn's point, the efficiencies of county government, and there is going to need to be an evaluation of how many FTEs we would be adding by moving what departments out of here. And I think before you could do any kind of RFP, you would have to come to a conclusion that you have departments, which ones, and which ones to a certain amount of square footage that you're prepared to even consider moving off campus. So I think it's premature to even consider an RFP until that exercise is completed. And those that would recommend that, I would want to know which departments are you prepared to move off campus that equal whatever it is that you're going to build, whether it's 22 or 12. And otherwise, we're doing an RFP that I think is meaningless.
Okay. I'm hoping the committee chair and facilities will get some knowledge of that by the next meeting.
Okay. And then finish up with my committee report. I did not attend Cornell Cooperative, which I do enjoy making.
Right.
I went to the City Hall for the Civic Center meeting that they had, and I apologize to Dr. Seeley for that. But just an update is the engineers, Jeff Tennis, et cetera, have sent out an RFP for the solar. They've got stuff back. There was issues with the floodplain there as far as a solar farm on that property that we have to talk about, and then we'll be moving forward with that in some vein or other. So I just wanted Cornell to know, because I would have been telling him that if I attended the meeting.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to Supervisor Westcott, and you can start the committee reports.
Okay, thank you. Social Services has met and made a decision on commissioner. You have in your packet today Resolution 503, where the committee has voted to recommend to the full board that we promote Maureen Schmidt to Social Services Commissioner. This decision was made after a very thorough and professional search for the position, handled by County Administrator Dusak and Personnel Director Stefan. We looked at a number of resumes and interviewed candidates, and we as a committee came to the conclusion to promote within. Maureen Schmidt has been an outstanding employee of Warren County. She has served in many supervisor positions in social services. She's most recently the deputy commissioner who has done an outstanding job, including filling in for after Suzanne Wheeler retired. She's done a great job. It'll keep the continuity over there. We all know her, and I am very pleased and honored to present her as the candidate through Resolution 503, and I hope you all support her, her in this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Budget Officer. The Budget Committee did meet on October 7th. At that meeting, several things were discussed. A review of the multi-year plan and the level of sales tax that's projected. The highways, the roads, paving of the roads was discussed. The radios, we discussed the radios. We also discussed increased payments to the towns that plow the county roads. The health insurance, the projected decrease from 8% to 4%. A multitude of things were discussed. Since that time, the budget team has met 2 or 3 times. We've arrived at some decisions. We're awaiting with bated breath the final, the number of where we're at, and we'll probably have that by Monday. And the next budget meeting is Tuesday at 10 o'clock. So we'll have a better idea of where we're at. We have decided at this point to budget for till the end of May for Westmount. I can say that if we have to budget for the whole year for Westmount, we'll have to alter what we have in the budget currently. That.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Frank. Having done it for a few years, I know he's put an awful lot of work into the budget, and that, we were a little high doing what we wanted to do, but now we have the challenges it faces again this year, and it just doesn't seem to end. But they've put a lot of time and effort. Frank and the budget team have put a lot of effort in to try to bring us in on an on-time budget and fund with a minimum tax increase. I guess that would be correct, right, Frank?
That's the hope.
Supervisor Wood.
All right. We met September 29th for public safety. Most of it was basic housekeeping. The bulk of the meeting was, as we saw today, the report from Televate, which I'm not going to recap because we've dwelled on that enough for the morning. What I would like to do now is speak for a few minutes in regard to Resolution 492. I voted against it the last time, and I've still got significant concerns, particularly regarding the organizational structure of the HR department. But I also realize that we've got the privilege of employing many good people here at Warren County. And as this board debates and we take action, sometimes we don't realize or that we forget that what we do has far-reaching and sometimes unintended consequences, both in the day-to-day operations here and also in the message we send to our employees. Our employees are people, and these people work hard with less resources and less staff than they have in the past. Over the last years, we've asked them to do much more with so much less. Keeping that in mind, the growth of the HR department this year, it's important, but it's caused me a great deal of concern. And it's not just because the budget has increased so drastically, but also because we continue to add and reclassify, adjust salaries in that department while many of our other departments have struggled for longer with much less. And I know today that many of us want to send a strong message that, we're not comfortable with this and we've got some concerns going forward. However, we can do that, and we should do it, I think. But I think we also need to be careful that we don't have those unintended consequences again, and that we don't set back the important functions of the department in order to send that message. If we hurt our departments, ultimately, we're going to hurt the day-to-day operations. It's going to come back. It's going to hurt ourselves, because then we're going to be straightening out the mess. I know there's been a lot of talk here. A number of us have been discussing it. The problem seems to be that nobody comes right out and says, hey, okay, we think we've got a problem. So I guess I'm going to be the one that says, I think there's a problem here. But one of the other things I think that's also important is that we also propose a solution. It's okay to say we've got a problem, but what's the practical solution to that? And so my suggestion is at this point, when we go back with the permission of the chairman of personnel, I'd like to have an executive session the next personnel committee meeting to discuss the employment history of two particular unnamed county employees. And I'd also like us to start taking a good look at the HR department, and let's re-examine that local law. I know we said in the past that if it didn't look right, we'd come back and maybe make some adjustments. I think maybe it's time we came back and re-examine that. But also to make things kind of move forward, because we still want to be moving forward, and we've been struggling this year with that. I think that I'd like to also propose an amendment to Resolution 492 today to include language stating that the position shall dedicate 20 hours a week to HR and 20 hours a week to civil service, and the county administrator be hereby directed to ensure the terms of that resolution are carried out. It's a compromise. It increased my level of comfort. I think it would help with others. It would also clarify exactly what this position is going to do, which I think is important. And also, it's a directive of the board, so I know some folks are concerned that even if we do amend it, it won't be enforced. As far as I'm concerned, folks, it's a board directive, and if we check in and we find it's not being enforced, then we need to discipline appropriately. If we have these concerns, we really need to start addressing them. And so I would ask that, we set aside just chatting about it in the halls and actually start to do something with it. And I would really like to see that particular resolution amended. Thank you.
Evelyn?
Is that ask her if it's a motion?
Could
Is that a motion? Yeah.
It was a motion, yes.
Could you once again go over the amendment?
I'd like it to read that there would be 20 hours a week dedicated to civil service and 20 hours a week dedicated to human resources, and that the county administrator be directed to ensure that that takes place.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Bill. Any other discussion? Okay, Mark?
I'm not at all versed on this or qualified to make that kind of a decision on the spot. I could not possibly know what would be the right decision to make.
Thank you. Rachel?
I think this is something that has been talked about in the hallways and on the side, and I know both Evelyn and I have had a lot of discussion about it. And I certainly support any type of executive session regarding the resources that we have both in HR and civil service, and taking a look at that local law, and perhaps it is time that as a board we talk about amending it and what works best. But I'd also like to call your attention to the fact that we're talking about a $3,000 position that's going to fill out the rest of the year. I think that at some point as supervisors, we have all, well, I know we've all been elected to do what is fair and what is right. And that being said, I don't necessarily think it's fair to every department to continue to build into just one department and not hear others out. Every single department head is going to tell us they need help, that they're overstaffed, or they're understaffed, that they have too much work in front of them. And so let's be fair. Let's hear from every single department then. Let's evaluate if they all need temporary assistance. Because when we look at departments such as the Veterans Administration, we see that that secretary position has been a part-time position for several years. And of course, Supervisor Frazier is very well versed in this, given, this is her committee. And this department has come forward and asked for help time and time again to be able to provide adequate services to our veterans. And yet we continue to provide only a part-time assistance there. And right now that person gave notice and is took another job because she wanted benefits. I think at this point, if we're going to allow a temporary position at any department, we should take a hard look at departments like the VA and what can we do to provide those services to our veterans, and furthermore, produce some revenue by really allocating and assisting those individuals to VA benefits instead of social service benefits. So, we can take a really hard look at all of our departments, but I think we need to be fair. And I would just ask that you think about that. Think about every department, because when we look at HR, we've seen a department that and the budget officer has talked to me about this, we're up $136,000 from last year. But to be fair, as Frank has mentioned, we didn't have a dedicated person doing HR. We had a lot of people doing HR, but not a dedicated position. But we've rectified that. We've given her a $42,000 position as a confidential assistant, or as Paul pointed out, a deputy. But yet we give $42,000 to a position where we have other people in this county who've worked here for decades not making that kind of money. It's time we start to look at the longevity. It's time we look at the hard work that every employee puts in here. It's not fair what we're doing. So I look at all of that and I think, what can we do? Well, what we can do as a board is say, listen, I know it's only a temporary position, but let's take a position. Let's talk about the issues that are important to our departments, because we're elected to represent all of them in our communities. And in Queensbury, this is an issue. This is something I've heard from people about. So I would just ask you to really give some hard thought to this. And even if we make that amendment, Evelyn, I'm not so sure in reality that's what we're going to see. And I know this is a position that we're putting into the budget for next year, or that Frank is thinking about. Yeah. So, that's kind of the backstory on it. We're $27,000 from the contingency fund right now in that department.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I know, Mr. Taylor, you wanted to address it?
Yeah, I have a problem with the amendment. I don't know how we can determine that someone has to work 20 hours on civil service and 20 hours on HR. We don't know the workload there. There may be some weeks when there's more work for civil service or more work for HR. And I think we have to have the department head be able to make that decision, that hold their feet to the fire by saying that you've got to spend your employees' time in this manner. I don't think that's reasonable. I understand your feelings about the position. You have strong feelings. And I can see how you might want to throw your spear in the ground at some point. But we're talking here about $4,000. We've got a backlog of payrolls that haven't been certified, and I think that that's primarily what this person is doing, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Paul?
Well, I may be able to help in this regard because I have been very much involved in the operations of the department, as you know, and has been referred to. There has been some growing pains, I'll call them, in terms of the coordination of both civil service and HR, quite frankly, and I think that's what everybody's really talking about. I felt that, or I feel that if we have this position, that it is, first of all, I think it is very much needed. There's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done in that department that hasn't been done in years, both on the civil service side as well as the HR side. And it's my opinion that that a 20-20 hour split is appropriate for that department in that position, at least going through to the rest of this year. We can certainly talk about next year, but right now there is so much work on both sides of the fence. On civil service and HR, there's going to be absolutely no problem in each side using 20 hours of this person's time. So I certainly would support that. And then when the position would be reevaluated as part of the budget process, and at that time we can discuss it again and certainly take further input. And in fact, part of the plan is, with regard to this department, is that I will be meeting again with both the personnel officer and the HR director to see how things are going. And certainly, if the personnel committee wishes to have further discussions, that's absolutely appropriate and certainly fine. But I would feel very, very comfortable, just so you know, with a 2020 split on this. And I would certainly, and as far as the direction goes, rest assured, even without the direction, I would certainly carry out the wishes of the board. And I assure you that I would make sure that that is in fact happening by regularly communicating with the office.
Right now, we have a vote to amend the resolution. So we'll do
We have a motion and a second.
motion and a second. You want to vote? Should we do it?
Just do a hand vote.
Hand vote. All those in favor, show of hands. Opposed? No, what are you going to do now, Joni? We're going to do a roll call.
Mr. Chairman, sir,
Yeah.
just one more question. This is just extended for the end of this year.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I mean, it's not going to be ruled in stone that it's going to be forward for next year. Yeah.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
And this is just to amend.
All this is to
792.
amend the resolution as written.
Mr. Westcott?
I'm a no.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
No.
Mr. Gerard?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Fox is here. Mr. Kenny?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Vansalo?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
660. Okay, that fails. The amendment.
The amendment fails. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other committee reports to report on? Evelyn, any more?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.